Happy Wednesday. This is Ting Ting, and I am currently in my home country, Taiwan, welcoming you to a new episode of the Female Guides Requested podcast. I'm excited to announce that today's guest is Alexis Krauss. Alexis wears many hats. She is a long-time lover of the outdoors and teaching, with a background in elementary education and human rights. She has been guiding outdoor adventures since 2016 and especially loves sharing the transformative power of nature with youth. An avid climber, she is an AMG apprentice rock guide, a single pitch instructor, and an NYS licensed climbing and hiking guide. She is an outdoor educator with Wild Earth, a New York nonprofit that provides transformative outdoor experiences for youth in the Hudson Valley. Alexis is also a co-founder of Kinship Climbing Collective, a climbing and leadership program for New York City girls and gender-expansive youth, and Rise Outside, a New York-based 501c3 dedicated to creating access to outdoor adventures for underrepresented communities through inclusive and qualified mentorship. Additionally, Alexis is a working musician and one half of the band Sleigh Bells. Chatting with her was so easy and fun. Her dedication and passion for uplifting youth and sharing the love of climbing were obvious. Without further ado, let's enjoy the episode with Alexis Krauss.
Welcome to the show, Female Guides Requested podcast. When Lori was said that you got to interview her, Alexis, and so she gave me your Instagram account. I went there. I was like, this cannot be it. You got too many followers for a guide. And I have to say that I'm not. I don't listen to a lot of music, so I'm not tuned into the music thing. And then I scroll through your post. I just say, yeah, it seems like, and I read it's like, yeah, apprentice rock guy. I just said, this got to be. Yeah. So you are going to be a very different representation.
Oh my God.
in this podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. The music, the world of music and the world of climbing are two worlds that I love deeply and care for deeply. And, you'd be surprised. There's been some more intersection between them than I would have anticipated. But yeah, I work as a musician and I also work as a climbing guide and outdoor educator. So it's been a really cool way to bring two passions together and figure out ways to make it work.
And I definitely would love to explore. You say that you found a lot of similarity between like two disciplines, because I used to be a computer scientist, and I also found a lot of similarity here. I feel that once you dive into a discipline, you start to find relations between what you're already familiar with, and then you kind of enrich the thing that you're learning too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I think the skills of climbing and performing, they definitely hold some common threads. I mean, I know when I step on stage, there's this feeling of incredible vulnerability, but also like invincibility, right? So it's like you step out there and everything kind of falls behind you. It doesn't matter what you're bringing onto the stage. All that matters is now you're there and you're stepping into this, for me, like very visceral performance. Our music is very loud and it's very cathartic. And so it's this kind of like out of body experience for me where I sort of forget my own, self-consciousness and my own, I wouldn't say I'm not an introverted person, but I definitely am a different version of myself when I'm on stage. And that's something that the music brings out of me, right? Like I always feel like I'm meeting the music where it's at. And so that sort of lack of, or like hyper focus of like in the moment of performing is very similar to the mindset I'm in when I'm climbing, right? Like when you're on a route that you are hyper focused on, or where you're working really hard, or even if you're just climbing for the pure just joy of it, when you're not, trying super hard to send something, like there's just a disconnect that happens that brings you fully into the environment and into the route and into nature. And that just complete lack of like self-consciousness that comes when you're in that flow state with climbing, I think is really similar to like where I am when I'm performing. And of course, like sometimes the performance just goes to shit, excuse my language, right? Like everything, there's technical difficulties, or the crowd isn't into it, or you're sick, or, and then you're just in your head the whole time. And that's the absolute worst. And of course, we've all been there with our climbing, where we're just in our head the whole time and everything falls apart. And then we get really scared and sad. So yeah. And it's also been great to like, I've met a lot of people in the climbing world who have been to sleigh bell shows, or who have found community in music as well. So yeah, it's just, it's always cool when I like meet a climber and they're like, oh, I went to a show, or, I listen to your music when I'm running, or whatever it is. So yeah, it's cool when the two worlds intersect.
And definitely. And I obviously this is a female guides requested podcast, so yeah. I'm not gonna address too much on your music career, but it's like such a big part of your life that I read online that you have to be on tour like 7 months a year or something like that. And then obviously when I search your name, it's like it just pop out a lot of like you have so many records and so many fans. So do you mind just describe that? So then, the audience that who might not be familiar with that, obviously they can go Google and stuff, can relay, in case later we have some conversation, kind of drop back to your music career.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've been a working musician now for a very long time. I started performing when I was a kid, and I worked in music throughout high school and college. And then I met my bandmate, Derek, who is my partner in crime for Sleigh Bells, which is our band, back in 2008. And we put out our first album in 2010. So we've been, working now as a band for a very long time. And yes, we spend a lot of time on tour, less so right now. But when we first started making music for the first, 5-6 years, we were absolutely touring, several months out of the year. And I personally love touring. I love the lifestyle. I love, being able to travel and meet new people, but it can be grueling, right? At any time that you're on the road for a long time away from home. But you have a family away from your home. Like you have a tour family, and a lot of the people that I've worked with since I was in my early 20s with this band. So it's a very intimate, beautiful life. And, we just released our first song for a new record that's coming out in a couple of months. I don't want to give too much away, but we released a song yesterday. And so that feels amazing to have some new music out there and to have some excitement. And, it's just my bandmate and I, we write all the music, we record all of the music. And, we're like best friends. We're like brother, sister. We have a really close relationship. And, I recently became a mother, and so we're going to be going back out on tour, but this time with my toddler. So that's going to be a big adventure.
It is. Yeah, I interview some guys and they have young kids, or they used to have young kids, and it's like pretty hard for like say female guys because you're out in the field for a long time. Yes. And then, so it's similar if you're on the tour, you have to, I bet it's like long hours, right?
Yeah, long hours. But it's an interesting, your day starts a little later and your night lasts a little longer, which is pretty different than the way I lived my life. I'm like, especially now as a mom, I'm up early, and because I spend so much time outside. You know, I love like early days and long days, and I like to go to bed early. So when I'm on tour, that all kind of reverses because we're not, you know, playing a show until 9 p.m., 10 p.m., and then you spend a long time trying to wind down from the performance. But yeah, long days. I think it's like anything in life. Like you have to find your, you know, the ways to take care of yourself, the ways to be, you know, to thrive. I'm a healthy person when I'm in general, and when I'm touring, like I don't party. I try and, you know, take really good care of my body and my voice. So for me, tour has always been an opportunity, not just to play music and connect with fans, but to explore, to travel. When I was on tour, that was actually the first time I went climbing, when my friends took me climbing outside in the Bay Area, because it was like, oh, we have a day off. Let's go do this. Let's go on a hike. And now when we have any days off, I'm like, where can we go? What crag can we go to? How can we rent a car or, you know, Uber to a
right.
Yeah. So yeah, I really enjoy being on tour. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm definitely looking forward to having my son with me. It's going to be a crazy adventure for sure.
Then let's discuss a little bit of like, you just mentioned that somebody took you to climbing.
Yeah.
On one of the tour.
Mm-hmm.
How did it feel? It's like first time climbing.
Oh my gosh. I was immediately addicted, and, you know, addicted in the best way, but I was obsessed. I had been at that point, I had climbed a little bit in the climbing gym, and I was really drawn to it. But when I got outside, we went to Mount Diablo in the Bay Area, and I mean, I got to the top of a route and I cried, just tears of joy. I mean, it was truly one of those like transformative moments in my life where I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew that I had just discovered something that was going to change my life and that I was going to do obsessively. So, yeah, it just, everything about it, the movement, the rock, the birds, the sky, the connection to being outside, the sense of power I felt, the meditative quality of climbing and moving and breathing and connecting movement and breath. It just, yeah, it was amazing.
And how did you find it? Yeah, I mean, I understand rock climbing is amazing, because I'm also a rock climber. But I'm trying to, I guess different people have different. Yeah, I don't know. It's like I wish you can like articulate even more. Just like instead of just like it's amazing, because a lot of times I just like, wow, what exactly did you see?
What did I like? My first time
feel, yeah. And then the continuous love, just like, well, I will be doing this for a long time, and I want to be better, I will climb more and stuff.
I mean, I think for me, like I grew up spending a lot of time outside, but my family didn't have a ton of resources, so we didn't spend time outside. Like we didn't go camping or go hiking. Like there was no such thing as like outdoor recreation, right? We just spent time outside. Like I climbed trees and I swam in the water, and my mom and I ran around barefoot, and like she taught me this deep love and appreciation for the natural world, but it was not in a way where like there were goals. I guess I just didn't even know that there was a world. I didn't even know about rock climbing, and I had just kind of started to get into hiking. And that's really because I lived in New York City and I got a dog and I wanted to get her out to be able to run around. So my mom and I kind of discovered the trail networks of the Shawangunks and the Catskill Mountains coming from New York City. And so I had gotten into, like, we would go on hikes and there would be sections where there was scrambling, right? Where we'd be scrambling up little boulders and rocks. And it just blew our minds, like this next level way to move through nature. And like I had mentioned, I'd loved climbing trees. So getting to touch rock, like, really connected me to that important part of my childhood. So when my friends took me climbing outside, I just felt like a culmination of anything and everything I'd always wanted to do outside. Like it just unlocked this new thing. Like, oh my gosh, I can be outside. I can move my body almost like I used to when I was dancing, right? So there was like that connection to dance. There was a connection to movement. And then there was also this just like, this feels like the ultimate way to get outside and explore and connect and discover. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's like how I would contextualize it. It just like, and it was really overwhelming to just be like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I need to do this more. And then from there, I became, obviously, as most climbers do, who want to become independent and who want to, be able to go outside on their own and with their own partners. It became this like obsessive dive into like, well, how do I do it and how do I do it safely? Right. I mean, how do I empower myself and educate myself? And obviously climbing has risk. And so, I think that's the challenge of like the beginner climber becoming the intermediate climber, becoming the advanced climber is, how do you move slowly but quickly at the same time, right? Like, from wilderness medicine, right? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. But like this idea of like, oh my gosh, like I just need to like jump into this, but also being like, well, this could kill me. So I better slow down and be smart about it. But yeah, I think, I'll stop there. I don't want to ramble too much, but yeah, it just, it unlocked something for me.
I see. And in one of the YouTube interview I watched, that you mentioned that you move a lot on the stage when you perform.
I do.
So your performance is more of like very active. Do you do any choreography or you just dance and?
Yeah, we have done some choreography for like some music videos and whatnot in the past, but on stage, there's no choreography. It's really just me being very spontaneous and, I guess I have a background in dance and, but I was never a professional dancer by any means. And for me, our music is just always felt like a lot more, kind of chaotic and I've never, gone the like choreographed route. So, but I jump around. I jump around a lot. I'm very physical on stage. When I get off stage, I'm, pouring sweat and, and hydrating with lots of coconut oil and I'm not coconut oil, lots of coconut water and other electrolytes.
Right. So you certainly enjoy movement, right? So you dance and you're pretty athletic and move along the stage. And then you discover, well, you did climbing in climbing gym, you mentioned, but outside climbing obviously is different.
Yeah. No, for me, outside climbing, everything from that point forward, like everything about the gym became a means to climb outside. Like the gym was never, I like the gym, but it was just all about like I climb in the gym to get strong and practice so I can get outside. And very quickly, climbing for me became climbing outside, not just for myself, but because I want to share this with others. And that was the beginning of my desire to guide and to teach, because for me, it was like, I had this realization of like, here's something that I discovered. I didn't even know it existed. And now I really want to share this with other people that I'm in community with, specifically young people and other women and other underrepresented folks outside. But yeah, very quickly became like educating myself. And then I want to take this education and teach it to others so that they can pass it on. Climbing has always been for me like building that outdoor community and that network of people who are discovering something amazing, but maybe don't have the access to like, or the ability to figure out how to do it safely, and can't just, hire guides consistently, because as we know, hiring a guide can be really costly. So it just became about like this knowledge sharing, mentorship, right?
Right. And so then on your way to be an independent climber, did you hire a guide or did you have any like mentors that helped you a lot?
Yeah. So I in my ice climbing, I hired a couple of guides, because I found that I was really like, especially in certain parts of the Northeast, some of the like navigating some of the terrain and the approaches and setting up ice before I was leading any ice, excuse me, just felt really treacherous. So I wanted to make sure that, you know, I was learning from the best. In my rock climbing, I'm trying to think. I never hired a guide for rock climbing. I was fortunate enough to have friends who were willing to take me climbing. And then once I started, because I started sport climbing outside, and I had friends in the gym who were competent enough climbing outside and leading sport. And so there was a lot of learning together, but I also, I think, was receiving like pretty solid mentorship from some friends. And then I really didn't have many friends who trad climbed. And for me, trad climbing was just always something that was like way too scary. Like, no way, I'm never going to trad climb. No way. And then I was on a sport climbing trip in Vegas and Red Rock. And I remember we were driving the loop road out of the park because we had been climbing mostly at like the first and second pullout. And then, you know, we drove the whole loop road out, and I was just looking at all of the formations. And my friend was pointing out like, oh, that's Cat in the Hat, and that's that, and that's that. And I was looking at all these formations, and I was like, wow, if I ever want to climb those, I need to learn how to be a trad climber. And I promised myself, I was like, next time I come back here, I'm going to lead a trad route. And I did. And then so it was Red Rock that just like really did it for me. And then I when I got home, I started climbing more in the Gunks, which is still my home crag. And I was really fortunate to meet a mentor named Carol. And Carol Garfinkel is in her, I don't want to get her age right. Wrong. She wouldn't care, but I think she's early 60s at this point. I think Carol's early 60s. Yeah. And Carol is a part of this like crew of just badass women who climb in the Gunks and who have been doing so for a long time. And so Carol introduced me to a few of her friends, who were just, and they still are. I mean, Carol like came to our wedding, right? She's a dear friend. She also introduced me to my husband. So Carol has been instrumental in my life. But anyway, like Carol introduced me to her people, and this was a crew of women who were just so thoughtful and knowledgeable and so welcoming. And so they gave me like exceptional mentorship, like really,
Wow.
Yeah. Like, and this, like, these are the people that, you know, I wish everybody who was a beginner trad climber could climb with, right? There was never any ego. There was never any pressure to climb beyond what I was capable of. They placed really good gear. They taught me how to place really good gear. They taught me how to test my gear. They taught me how to test for rock quality. They taught me, you know, they just taught me so many skills. And so I started climbing with them, and then just like really took my time working my way up through the grades. You know, I was not like a strong enough climber when I started leading trad to just like jump on 5'9", 5'10".
And in any way, the Gunks is hard.
Oh gosh, that Gunks is so hard. It's so sandbag. You know, so I started like climbing all the 5'1s, all the 5'2s, all the 5'3s, all the 5'4s. And if you've climbed in the Gunks, I mean, you just mentioned it, right? It's hard, and you can have an epic adventure on a 5'3, you know?
Yes. Yeah. I start climbing in the Gunks myself.
Oh, amazing. Okay.
Yeah, I used to live in Philadelphia, and that's the closest destination for me. Yeah. And that's where I cut my teeth. Yeah, I have my fair share of 5'3s, 5'4, 5'5.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Gelsa, Minty, right? Like, these are all climbs that, you know, I had some of my most memorable trad experiences on. And so, yeah, you know, I think that I was fortunate in that sense that I lucked out in finding a community of mentors.
A group of women, you mentioned.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I mean, I had male climbing partners, and I still do. My buddy Alon, he was one of my first mentors. But yeah, I think meeting Carol was really pivotal for me. And and then just like, and that was another thing that was incredible about climbing, right? Is like you think of it as historically such a male dominated sport. And here I was like climbing with these older women, right? Who I was in awe of them. I was like, how have you been doing this for long? Like, where have you been all of my life? You know? And so that I think really informed like my view of, you know, of what I wanted to be around. You know, I was relatively insulated from some of the like toxic, you know, domineering, competitive aspects of climbing that I think some people get caught up in, or maybe are like thrown into, and then maybe that leaves like a bad taste in their mouth. I felt like from the get-go, I had a lot of nurturing and a lot of support in my climbing.
Wow. I would say it's really lucky. When I started climbing, I didn't remember I have those things. I was competing with white guys and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the majority, right?
Right. and I know that eventually you, because you want to share your experience, you wish the newer climbers can have a similar environment so they can grow in a safe environment and supportive environment. But when do you feel like, wow, is that from the very beginning you feel like you want to be a guy, or like during this process you feel like, yeah, I think this is really my calling and stuff?
Okay, so I guess I'll first mention that I have a background in elementary education. So before I joined Sleigh Bells, before I met my bandmate, I was working as a 4th grade teacher in New York City, and I was teaching bilingual 4th grade, so everything in English and also everything in Spanish. And I had an absolute, like, I loved my kids. Like, I loved teaching. I loved education. I loved getting my kids outside of the classroom. So I have a deep connection and love of teaching young people. So that was kind of put on the back burner because I joined Sleigh Bells, and then my life became very much about, you know, being in a band full time. So I had been, you know, even prior to discovering climbing, which I discovered climbing in like 2013, I think. So even prior to discovering climbing, I had been kind of longing for a way to reconnect with young people and to reconnect to teaching. So I discovered climbing, and around that same time, when I was at my local climbing gym, I was walking up to the gym, and they were having, I think it was like a job fair. And so there was a table outside of a couple folks who were working for a company that at the time was called Discover Outdoors. And I was chatting with them, and they were like, yeah, we bring New York City public school kids outside, and we get them outside, we get them hiking, we get them backpacking. And at this point, I think I was already sport climbing outside. I had gotten into hiking. And so hearing that there was an organization that was getting New York City public school kids outside was just like, what? Like, this is blowing my mind. I must be a part of this organization. So I was, you know, I told them like right there and then, I would love to volunteer for you all. And so Lauren, who was the operations manager at that time, you know, she's incredible. She actually owns and operates a really great guide service right now called Good Trip Adventures. And they're mostly in like the Rockies and out west. So Lauren was at the table that day, and she was like, well, she's like, you know, I love that you want to volunteer, but have you ever considered guiding? And, you know, I was completely clueless about anything in the outdoor recreation space. And I don't even think I understood what guiding was. All I knew was I had like immediate imposter syndrome. And I was just like, what? Guiding? Like, no, I've never considered guiding. And she was like, well, maybe you could become a guide. And that was just like such a moonshot to me. Like, I didn't even understand what that would entail or what it even meant. All I knew was this person was asking me to consider becoming a guide. So, Lauren followed through, and she had me come to the Discover Outdoors office, and they had a whole orientation process for new guides, and they had a program, an education program for folks who didn't have experience guiding. And we're talking, primarily hiking and backpacking and camping. So it was through Lauren and Discover Outdoors that I learned all about New York State Guides licenses and the education. I learned about Wilderness First responders. I learned about water safety, and Discover Outdoors invested in me to, as they did with their entire guide team, to, become a licensed New York State guide. So before you knew it, I was, leading hikes. I was driving the van from New York City up to the Catskills. I was leading backpacking trips for kids. And I was working as a guide, and it was really this just completely unexpected trajectory. And it really aligned with my climbing journey, because obviously as a climber, you want to understand, wilderness first aid. You want to understand navigation. You want to understand, the ethics of being outside and leave no trace, right? So this education that I was receiving as this, New York hiking guide was really aligned with the education that I was pursuing with my own climbing. And so after working with Discover Outdoors for a while, Lauren, once again, was a really passionate advocate for women and the outdoors. So she had spearheaded a program called, I think it was called, I'll have to check, but it was like a women outdoors something. It had a catchier name, and I can't believe I'm blanking on it. But anyway, so she started this program that was basically like, it was like a week long, getting women outside. And so there would be like women specific hiking trips and a women specific backpacking essentials course, and all different workshops on like, what to pack. What do you do if you're menstruating outside? How do you poop in the woods? Just like all of this, like really great knowledge for women. How do you find a proper backpack that fits a woman's body? So part of the like curriculum or programming for that year was to do a women's climbing day. And so I helped organize that at the Cliffs in Long Island City. And so we had this amazing meetup with women and, coming together and climbing together. We had experienced women mentoring new women climbers. We had folks like Shelma Junn from Flash Foxy come through to speak at a panel. So it just was like this really awesome moment where it was the first time I had been in a true like affinity space for women in climbing. And from there, a couple of the folks that I had worked with in that space, Eva Kalea and Emily Varisco. Eva at that time was the creative director of the Cliffs in Long Island City, and Emily Varisco was the head climbing coach there. We got together and were like, how great would it be if we took this idea of like this women's climbing meetup and brought it to young women? And so it was then that we started brainstorming, doing that, basically that same program, but for young women. And so through Discover Outdoors and through some of the connections they already had with New York City public schools, we went and visited a couple of schools, talked to a couple of young women, and basically invited them to come rock climbing at the Cliffs in Long Island City. And so that was the beginning of a program called Young Women Who Crush. And that was co-founded by myself, Eva, and Emily. It's now in its like 8th year, and we changed our name to Kinship Climbing Collective. So I know this is a lot of information, but I go back to my, getting into guiding, because it was not until we started running Young Women Who Crush as a yearly program, right? Initially, that was just going to be a one-day meetup for some students. And they fell so madly in love with climbing. And we were like, oh my gosh, we've just created this really beautiful mentor-mentee relationship between these young women and these mentors. And we realized there's a real need here, right? There are so many young women who are in the city. They want to move their bodies. They want to learn from other women. They have no idea what rock climbing is. So the idea of it is super exciting. And rock climbing is expensive. And especially young women who are attending New York City public schools, like their families are not able to afford a gym membership. So we, created this indoor curriculum and then decided, well, let's get these students outside. So it wasn't until we started bringing them outside and we were hiring guides. We initially worked with Mountain Skills, Doug Ferguson. So we were hiring Doug and we were working with the Mountain Skills team, and they were fantastic. But we realized, isn't it a little strange that we spend the whole year, right, with women teaching women, right? So our program at that point was all about, experienced climbers teaching our high school students. And it was all women in community. And then our community grew to include women and genderqueer folks, right? Because we had, non-binary students and trans mentors. So we became more inclusive in that way. But still, we would go outside and all of our guides were white men. And we really started scratching our heads at that. And
I can understand. Yes.
Right. So like me, especially, I was like, all right, this just isn't adding up. And at that point, I was already licensed New York State guide. So I was leading hikes and I was feeling super competent and, really loving pushing myself outside. I was leading trad. I was, spending a lot of time rock climbing. I was climbing multi-pitch. And I had met a lot of fantastic single pitch instructors, right? I had met, Anissa Lucena, who was climbing for, with Mountain Skills, who was guiding for Mountain Skills. I met, Patty Lankhorst, who was guiding for EMS, who has been an incredible mentor of mine. And so I was meeting all of these women guides in the gunks, Carolyn Riccardi, and they were like, yeah, you can do this. You can guide, right? And so it was another one of those moments in my life where I was like, wow, I think they're right. Like, I think I can do this. And so I took my single pitch instructor course with Mountain Skills with Doug Ferguson, and I took my time. I took about a year and a half of just working, and he was, super honest and upright with me, about like, this is what you need to work on. These are your technical skills need a lot of work. This is where you need to grow. And so I worked my ass off and I climbed with a lot of really good climbers, and I took my single pitch instructor exam and I passed, and I, was then able to start guiding young women who crush, which was incredible. And now we have, it's a long story, but we have built this entire guide team of women and genderqueer guides. So now anytime Kinship Climbing Collective goes out on a guided day, they're going out with people who look and, are represented by them, right? So they're seeing themselves in their guides, right? We have a super diverse crew. And so for me, guiding was all about, how do I create a space of an inclusive space, a welcoming space for, the young people that I've been working with inside. And then it's just ballooned into, a greater love and passion for creating accessible opportunities for people to climb outside in a safe and knowledgeable, and qualified environment.
Ooh. So the young woman who crushed, then that's a nonprofit, I assume.
Yeah, so we're not a registered 501c3. We've always worked as a partnership and a program of a youth organization called Cat Rock Ventures, and so we're essentially like they do what's called fiscally sponsor us, right? So we're not a registered 501c3 because it just takes a lot of work.
Yes,
and we don't have staff. We're an all volunteer organization. And so up until this moment, we've always been, a partner program, but yeah, we're essentially what you would consider like a nonprofit organization.
Yeah, I understand, because I do know I interview some other female guys that work for like ladies weekend out, but then they collaborate with Sky Services to deal with insurance and permits and everything.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it will be too costly and too much work. everybody's volunteering, or not get paid a whole lot. Yeah.
Exactly. And that just opened up a whole other can of worms, which is why we went ahead and founded our own nonprofit guide service, which is called Rise Outside Collective, because we were like, there's all these groups, Young Women Who Crush, which is now Kinship Climbing Collective, and, groups like Para Cliffhangers, ACG, NY3C, like all these amazing BIPOC Climbing Collective, all these amazing climbing meetup organizations that want to get outside but can't afford paying full guide rates, or also want to work with a diverse crew of guides that aren't just cis white men. So, but then we realized, like, okay, we have to actually build our own nonprofit guide service and have our own insurance and have our own permits and have our own guides, and eventually work on becoming AMGA accredited. So that's been a whole other journey of actually working on running a guide service.
Cool. So Rise Outside, I went to the website. So that's a nonprofit. That's a registered nonprofit.
Yes, we are registered 501c3. Yes.
And then you and your co-founder will also try to run it. So is it also kind of like a guide service? Is it a nonprofit and a guide service?
We refer to ourselves as a nonprofit guide service. So,
so you have your own permit, you have your own insurance and everything.
Exactly. Yes.
So you could potentially sponsor the Kinship.
Yeah, that's what we do. Yeah, so we basically so Kinship Climbing Collective now, when they want to go outside, they work with Rise Outside, and so Rise Outside provides rates that are subsidized, that are able to meet the needs of our affinity programs like Kinship. We also fundraise on behalf of the organizations that we support, right? So say Kinship Climbing Collective comes to us and says, we want to do a 3-day guided retreat in the Adirondacks, but we need a $10,000 budget. Rise Outside, because we're a 501c3, we can, collaborate with No Man's Land Film Festival and throw a fundraiser at, GP81. We can, put a fundraiser up online. So we do a lot of work to fundraise for our partner organizations so that we can help them realize their dreams outside. So that's been, that's our primary goal. But like I said, we also, we have a great guide team. People can hire our guides for private guided days, for group guided days. And we also offer a lot of scholarship programming. And we primarily work at the Mohawk Preserve and at Minnewaska State Park in New York.
And so for Rise Outside, so you have your mission or vision is to create this affinity space, and you create space for any people who might be under-resourced to go climbing. But on the side, though, you also might have people can hire as private guiding. So those are kind of, say, well, in quote, regular guiding or ordinary guiding. I don't know.
Yeah. Anybody can hire a guide for Rise Outside, right? But anybody, when they, we're very clear about our mission. We're very clear that our mission is to increase access to underrepresented communities outside. So if you are a private citizen and you come to us and say, hey, I want to do a guided day, we say, great. And we are very transparent about, this is how much we charge. This is the percent that is going to then go back to our budget so that we can fund programming for, a variety of different organizations that we work with. And also we want to provide our guides with, good guide pay. We know how underpaid and overworked guides are, right? We know how unsustainable guiding can be for so many people. So we're trying to create a model for our guides that is truly empowering. We're trying to pay them, competitive, equitable rates. We're constantly in conversation about, what's the most ethical way to train our guides, to protect our guides from injury. So but like I said, anybody can hire a guide, but we do prioritize, providing free programming for organizations that are bringing, diverse groups of people into the outdoors, whether they're represented from BIPOC communities or queer communities or communities of youth. communities of climbers with disabilities, right? So our mission is really to, provide access to people who maybe are encountering more barriers than your average person who's interested in going rock climbing.
Yeah, I mean, and the reason I asked that is not ask you whether you are a regular guide service. I'm just curious that, because you fund your mission by raise funds, right? So
Yes.
I'm just curious whether that part of guiding is also gonna tunnel into like your core mission of like.
Yeah, it's all the funds go to the same place, right? So it's like if you hire Alan Klein, we make sure that the cost of rentals are covered, that Alan gets paid, the cost of our insurance and our permits and things like that are covered, right? Which is what every guide service is trying to cover. And then we also make sure that part of that is allocated to then fund our subsidized and free programming. And, we're held accountable by our board of directors, which is really interesting because we're a nonprofit. So we have this fantastic group of, volunteer board of directors who are advocates, who are climbers, who are community organizers, who, everything from educators to working with indigenous communities to running, climbing festivals. So we have this fantastic board who is constantly working with us on, growing our not just our financial resources, but, growing our mission, holding us accountable to our mission, helping us come up with, partner opportunities, helping us, create, strategic vision. So it's a really interesting model, and we're the only nonprofit guide service that's operating in the Gunks, and we're really thankful to the Mohonk Preserve and our other partners like New York State Parks for kind of like creating this with us, right? Like we came to the Mohonk Preserve and we're like, we're doing this thing, and they took a long time, but they were very thoughtful about it, and they essentially came up with a new type of permit so that we could run our programming. And that opened the doors for other nonprofit guide services, right? Other people who are looking to use a similar model to get people outside. So it's been quite a journey, and we
myself. And I'm very curious. What do you mean by they create a new type of permit?
So without getting like too much into the weeds, but basically, there were certain ratios that you had to abide by as a guide service. And there were also only like, you could only have a group of say like 6 students out on weekdays. Like you couldn't operate on weekends. There were some scope of practice differences. And so we basically said like, we want to be able to run this type of programming on weekends. We want to be able to have this type of ratio. We want to be able to do this all legally and abide by Mohonk Preserve regulation. But, there are limitations to what y'all are offering that are really only working for this for-profit system and for the guide services that have been at the preserve operating for a long time. And we also were like, this is the first guide service that's run by a group of people who aren't white men. And like, we're envisioning a different sort of mission. And so, it was a journey, and
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, I'll be real with you. Like it pissed people off. People were just like, what's going on here? Like, who are you guys? Like, who are these new kids on the block coming in here and trying to shake things up? And, people thought we were getting special treatment. And so, we all know there's politics in climbing and guiding, and I get it. Guiding is hard, right? You're running your own business. There's a lot of competition, but I think we had to prove to people, like, we're not trying to take your clients. We're trying to create a more welcoming, more inclusive environment. So people that would traditionally never call you, or people who would traditionally never have access to this, are now able to come to the cliff and share in this incredible thing that we all get to do. And so I think once people realized we had like the best of intentions, then it became a little bit more palatable for people. But, you know, let's be real. Like, we see what's happening right now with the crackdowns on DEI.
Yes.
Happening, right? Like, with people thinking that, you know, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion work is somehow part of a liberal woke mind virus or whatever people think. And so, you know, when you have a mission that's not just we take people rock climbing, when you have a mission that is, you know, in some ways radical, right? Saying like, we as the climbing community need to do more to make climbing accessible and welcoming. And yes, barriers exist. Yes, some people don't feel comfortable going to the crag because they've heard people use slurs, or they've been talked down to, or they've experienced discrimination, or they've experienced sexism, or they've experienced racism, right? And for a lot of people, when you bring some of those conversations into climbing, there can be a little bit of an attitude of just like, well, just shut up and climb. Like, what's the big deal?
Yes.
Right?
I'm familiar with that attitude.
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, as women in guiding, right? Like, you know, we've experienced a lot of that, and I've experienced much less of it because I've only been guiding for, you know, 6 or 7 years. Women who have been in this game for decades, like, they know. And, you know, so unfortunately, I think anytime, you know, you're bringing ideas and that maybe challenge the status quo, you're going to get some pushback, and you have to stay strong, and you have to, you know, find the community that's really going to support you. And so, yeah, it's been quite the journey, and we're now really excited because we have enough, you know, budget that we're able to pay an executive director. And Marian Perez, who is a single pitch instructor and a dear friend of mine, you know, they are spearheading our organization right now and doing a ton of incredible outreach. And yeah, I'm really excited about our programming and what's to come.
Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful. I mean, you start with young women who crush, you know, and you start small, working with other guide service, and then it seems like the program grows really well. A lot of people want to do it, right? And then so you find that you have the need to have your own guide service or guys outside.
Yeah.
And I'm just very intrigued by, you know, the permit thing. I've been talking, you know, with a lot of guys, and we all know the permit thing is like the biggest crux for guys operate in the United States.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of nice that over there you can talk with reasonable people, then sort the things out.
No, it was amazing. And you know, I got to give a lot of credit to the Mohawk Preserve and John Ross and other people there. You know, we had to present to their, you know, their board and, you know, have a lot of serious conversations. And, you know, it was great because, you know, Alan and Eric, two of our co-founders, you know, they were working as rangers for the preserve. So, you know, the preserve, you know, I think really understood that we had all done a lot of work and we had all brought a lot of, you know, really wonderful organizations to the preserve, because the preserve's a nonprofit and they want, you know, people to be able to connect with the land and experience, you know, their preserve. So I think all in all, they were really excited that we were opening up opportunities for more people who traditionally wouldn't have access to access the preserve. But yeah, permitting can be challenging, you know, and we're now working on AMGA accreditation. So that's kind of our next step, because we want to be a really, you know, credible, excellent guide service. You know, we want to make sure that when people hire us, they're getting a really fantastic day. So yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. And I'm curious that since you, I think Young Women Crush has been many years, right? So ever since, when was the first year?
2017 was our first year.
2017. Then there could be some young women. Is there any young woman express they want to come back and then teach these or like lead the trips?
Oh yeah. So we have, I don't know that we don't have a mentee who is working as a guide now, but we have mentees who are now mentors. We have mentees who are setting at climbing gyms. We have mentees who have gone on to run their university climbing clubs, who go on ice climbing trips in Uray. We have some
Nice.
absolutely incredible young people who have really gone on and pushed themselves in the outdoors, whether in mountaineering or rock climbing. It's been really fantastic. And I've actually, this past year, it was a really tough decision for me to make, but I stepped away from the day-to-day sort of leadership of Kinship Climbing Collective because I just have a lot on my plate right now, and I'm a new mom, and just trying to balance.
I know. I was going to ask about your time management strategy. I was like,
well, I had to make the really tough call that I think it was in the best interest of the organization for me to hand off leadership, and fortunately we have such a fantastic dedicated team of mentors that are running the organization now, and I'm still very much involved, and we actually just finished reviewing our applications for our new cohort of students that we're welcoming. But yeah, a lot of those mentors that are running the organization now started with us as sophomores, as juniors, as seniors, and are now in, either graduated college or in college, or are working in other aspects. So it's really, we really people stick with the organization, when they start, they really see it through. It's incredible.
nice. Then how about, so what's your time management strategy? I mean, other than give up some, responsibilities of a leadership role. I mean, you have how old is your son?
He's 16 months old.
Wow, 16
Yeah.
months. Yeah. And then you said that you just have a new release of a song. And then so you maybe assume a tour is calling and all that?
Yeah. I do a lot. And I love it. Like for me, it just all, I love it. And when you love something, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's
easy for sure, I guess.
Yeah. It's like, it's hard, but you love it. So you do it. And, as I mentioned earlier, like education has always been just a core part of who I am, and music has always been a core part of who I am. And so it's hard to imagine my life without either of them. And I don't know that I'd ever want to teach in a classroom surrounded by four walls again. Like the outdoors for me is really where I want to teach. I want to work with kids in nature, and whether that's on a trail or on a cliff, or just, sitting next to a stream and playing with frogs. Like I want to spend time with kids outside.
Yeah. And then come back to the original topic. Then can you share with me and the audience about the similarity and then especially those ones that surprise you about music and climbing?
I mean, beyond what I mentioned earlier about like the mental and emotional similarities of being in that like heightened state of like flow and performance, right? It's like, okay, here we go. Like we're touching the rock. We have our first piece of pro, like we're going up. The same thing with the show, like the show must go on, as they say. I mean, I think, as I mentioned a little bit, like nothing makes me happier than like walking down the carriage road in the gunks, or, belaying somebody and somebody comes by and says like, hey, are you Alexis from Sleigh Bells? And then, getting to talk to them about music and then talk to them about climbing. It's like when those spontaneous connections occur, it's the best thing in the world. I really can't imagine anything better. And, I think climbing is hard work. It's, like I've fallen in and out of love with climbing so many times. Climbing has like made me just question so much about myself. So much, I'm so hard on myself with my climbing. And I think I've arrived at a point now where I'm really finding so much joy in climbing. It's not breaking me down in the way that it used to, where I was so wrapped up in like, if I couldn't climb hard enough, or if I was, frustrated with myself, it would really take a big emotional toll on me. And I've really found some balance with that. And I think it's similar with music. It's like, or like it can be really, really hard, and it can really break you down, and you can really doubt yourself and feel a lot of intense feelings of failure, or like, oh, I should be better, or we haven't done enough, or, I wish I was more like this band or more like this artist. And there's constant comparison, and there's constant, self-imposed, imposter syndrome. And, so I think there's just a lot of similarities there, right? Like you just have to learn how to love yourself, and how to, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Make sure you're climbing for the right reasons. Make sure you're, making music for the right reasons. Are you making music because you want to, make money? Or are you making music because you want to, be liked? Or are you making music because you think it's genuinely great and you want to share it with the world, and you're going to be uninhibited, and you're going to be, you're going to make the best music that you can make, but it's the music that you want to make. Like, are you climbing for the right reasons? Are you climbing because, somebody told you that in order to be a good climber, you have to send 512? Or are you climbing because you fucking love climbing and you're going to take care of yourself, right? You're not going to go for a move because someone yells at you and tells you should go for the move. You're going to assess, and you're going to climb down, right? You're going to back off. You're going to, you're going to be smart about your falls. You're going to be kind to yourself if it's just not the day, like there's so many lessons that you can take from both careers. But I would imagine that's the same for, so many careers where you can pull from those lessons. But yeah, I think it's like the bottom line for me is, it's like, why am I doing this? Am I doing it for the right reason? Am I having fun? Because if I'm not having fun, then I'm over it.
So it's at your current stage, is your right reason is to have fun, or any other reasons to do it? Is it right?
I think it's kind of a separate conversation, like guiding versus recreational climbing.
Okay.
Right? Like, I guide. I always love guiding. I always love teaching. I can't think of a single day I've guided, and I've had some challenging clients. Before I worked for Rides Outside, I worked for EMS, and, I had some days that were challenging, but I really can't think of a day where I didn't learn something, either about myself or about others, or find connection. So I love guiding. I love teaching. I don't get dark in the same way with guiding and teaching that I do about recreational climbing. And I think because the focus is always on like somebody else. Like it allows me to caretake for somebody else, whereas I get like really hard and brutal with myself when it's just me and my recreational climbing. But I think I've gotten a lot better. I don't know. I had a really bad injury. Not from climbing, but I had, a terrible, I fractured my shoulder and had shoulder surgery. And then I had, then I was pregnant, and I had a near-death experience with childbirth. And so I've just physically and mentally and emotionally been through so much in the past couple of years that I think it's really shifted my perspective around climbing. Like, and I'm having a lot more fun. I'm so grateful that I get to still be able to do it. And I'm so grateful for my body's strength and resilience. And I'm like kind of in awe of my body. I think that like motherhood does that in a lot of ways where you're just like, what? I made a human? Like, I birthed a child. I can do anything. And so I think I'm just like a lot kinder to myself when I'm climbing now. And I enjoy it a lot more. So yeah, I think having fun for me at this point is a real important pillar of rock climbing.
Wow. It's a little bit different. I mean, obviously when I do my own personal climbing that I have, say, sometimes performance anxiety, you know, because we always want to get better.
Yeah.
But I mean, I enjoy guiding myself and I love to see people grow, but sometimes guiding it also gives you this responsibility, right? Because I have to watch every single thing.
Sure.
So people don't make critical mistake. So I never thought, I mean, I enjoy guiding, but I never would describe in your way, just like, wow, you know, you're just absolutely guiding is just, but then it doesn't have the dark side, but the person climbing has this dark side. I was just like, so
yeah.
like, yeah. And I was like, maybe sometimes I just work too much, then have to take a break.
Yeah. Well, I also think, you know, I have so much respect for, so I took my rock guide course and I am apprentice.
Okay. Yes.
But you know, I don't know at this point, you know, if I will become a rock guide. You know, I don't know. Like there's something about the increased pressure of guiding in more, you know, hazardous terrain. And there's also a level of dedication and time to climbing and to guiding that I don't know that I can give that right now. And the consequences, to your point, right? Like they're too high, right? So I would never want to guide in the way that you're guiding, or so many of the guides that I have such tremendous respect are guiding in, because I just don't know that I can meet those challenges at this point in my life. I don't doubt that I'd be capable of it, but at this point, I don't know that I have the ability to focus on guiding exclusively like I think I would need to in order to really step up my guiding into more, you know, difficult terrains. So I think I'm insulated from, you know, some of the intense decision making that you're having to make and that so many other guides are having to make. That's not to say that the single pitch terrain doesn't offer its challenges, but it's a much more controlled environment for the most part than, you know, what you're encountering if you're 2,000 feet off the ground.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit about, so you took Affinity rock guide course, right?
I did. Yeah. Yeah.
Was it in Boulder or in Red Rock?
It was in Red Rock.
Okay.
Yeah. It was in Red Rock. And that's where I met Lori.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did she take that one too?
She did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we both were with Margaret Wheeler.
Margaret Wheeler, yeah, she was on the show too.
Yeah, I love Margaret Wheeler. Margaret is so wonderful. And
yes.
And Paul Kubek was our other.
Then I probably remember that one because I bumped into a group. I just said, "Why is there a man?"
Oh my gosh! Yes, we did bump into you.
Oh, yes. I was talking with Margaret at that time. I was like, yes. Whoa, there was a man.
Yes, yeah. Well, so, I mean, here's an interesting thing. And this is public. I don't think I'm going to say anything that the AMJ would be unhappy about. But they did not have another woman guide available for that course. And so I think that's just a testament to how few.
It's not enough.
Yeah. There were exactly. So it was a big deal. They came to us and they said we're going to have Paul, instruct the course. And they asked all of the participants, like, in advance of us showing up, obviously, like, are you okay with that? Because they recognize that that would, you know, really shift the dynamic within the affinity space. And, you know, all the participants were okay with it. And, you know, Paul was amazing, and I'm so grateful that he was a part of it. And I learned so much from him. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just a testament to how few IFMGA women there are, right?
Right.
So, yeah, but that's why Paul was there.
I see. Yeah. And how was that course? And
that course was incredible. It was hard. It was really hard. I did well. I did well. I passed. I was really proud of my climbing. I was really proud of, you know, I came into that course really prepared, and I think that's always such a wonderful thing to know, that like you're going into it able to meet the challenges, because you know there's going to be a lot of challenges, and you know, like, you're going to be low on sleep, and it's going to be long days. And it was in October, but it was hot. It was really hot, so we were chasing a lot of shade. And I, you know, so I was really proud of myself with how I performed, but it was hard. You know, I struggle in learning environments where, especially in technical skills and like the rock rescue drill, like, it's just so much coming at you so fast. And I don't retain things that quickly. Like, I'm the type of person, I need to go home and I need to obsessively practice tying a bowline, right? Like, I need to obsessively practice my Munter mule overhand. Like, I just have a very hard time with knots and certain systems. I don't learn them quickly. So the, like, being in that course environment and like having to just go through all that content and then sort of like do a guided practice and then kind of master it and move on, is really hard for me. So Margaret was like getting the biggest kick out of it, because I was just like filming. I would basically like film the whole thing, and I would like just taking copious notes and then like adding attachments to my notes of the film, of like, you know, so I could watch exactly what she was doing and what Paul was doing. So in that sense, it really challenged me. It was just a lot of curriculum. But I met a fantastic group of women. I met, you know, Lori and my friend Hannah. And yeah, I think, you know, I was really, really grateful for the experience. I got a scholarship for it, which made it really doable. So yeah, it was an incredible experience. And, you know, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know where I'm going to go with it. You know?
And how many classmates you still have contact with?
We still all keep in touch a little bit. We still all have a WhatsApp chat going. But I would say, you know, Lori and Hannah are the folks that I keep in touch with the most.
I see. I mean, the reason I asked that, because I went through the AMG program myself, and then except the first one, all the rest, I was the only woman. Me, including student instructors, I was the only woman.
Yeah.
And then I don't think that I mean, I probably bump into my classmate on, you know, occasionally at a crack or whatever, but then I feel like I never have kept contact with them. But I think with affinity course, somehow you can have better bond.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I mean, the culture of this course was very different than the previous courses and exams that I had taken. You know, I think Margaret and Paul were really intentional in creating a lot of space for conversation, a lot of space for vulnerability, a lot of space for building community and relationship. And that felt different, you know, like there were opportunities for vulnerability, I think, more than anything, that, you know, that I don't think you're able to experience when you're the only, right? When you're the only woman,
right.
You're the only person of color, when you're the only, you're in a little bit more of a protective state, I know I was when I took my first, SPI course and I was the only woman. Like felt so much more pressure to be
perform, right?
Yeah, exactly. I did not feel comfortable saying like, actually, can you slow down, or can you say that again, or I'm just not really getting it, right? Because I was so afraid of like, oh, then they're gonna think like, oh, you're, oh yeah, of course, because you're the girl or you're the woman, like, and so much of that I've grown out of. I've realized that like I'm going to take up the space, whether I'm in a group of women or if I'm the only woman, right? Like I have much more confidence now. So a lot of that was on me. I'm not saying it's how I think the course provider did a great job, but I think, yeah, when you're the only one, there's a lot more pressure, and we know, that impacts people's ability to rise to the occasion and to, be comfortable. And so I think being in that affinity environment for me was really important. I think I learned a lot better than I would have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to know, because I myself never was a student enrolled in the affinity program.
Yeah.
But I taught some affinity program. So I always wonder, as a student, how would it feel? Yeah. So was that, you mentioned about rise up the occasion? Was that the reason that you named the nonprofit, right?
That wasn't the exact reason,
okay.
But in our conversations as co-founders, we did really connect with the word rise because of that reason, right? We wanted people to feel uplifted. We wanted people to think about movement, not just in their climbing, but, movement through, oppression, movement through, boundaries and barriers, movement, and rising and uplifting and empowerment. So yeah, that was why we.
Yeah. Talking with you, I started wondering that, because climbing, well, at least in my mind, is a very social partner based sports. Of course, I mean, people can say, oh, I mean, I go free solo, or, I don't free solo, but in any rate, I think the majority of people, you need to develop partnership. Yes. So it's kind of interesting, especially guiding is that it's all about people, and climbing is also about working with people and support people and support yourself. So I was like wondering, how come like in the guide training and then also all the course setting, traditionally we don't actually put it in a very big, put emphasis on that. Yeah. But it's just kind of nice. I just like, you go through those courses, right? If you have bond with your classmates, then you just immediately you have so many more partners.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, absolutely. And yeah, I love that. Like, it's just such a wonderful thing to see other women in that course, like, thriving, like you're more invested in their success. And like seeing Lori get like AMGA Guide of the Year, right? Like that was
wonderful. Yes.
I was so stoked for her. And, seeing my friend Hannah just like, take AMGA course after course and just crushing skiing and guide, it's just like, yeah, you're more invested in people's successes, and you feel a part of something that's bigger than yourself, right? Because you are truly in community, and their victories are your victories, right? Because it's not just about you as an individual, it's about you as a group of women,
right?
Just breaking down barriers and continue, move climbing forward in ways that we haven't seen yet.
Definitely. Yeah. And then like when I see other people climb, I just like, I I admire they try hard and I want them to succeed.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
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 And nobody just like, oh yeah, I mean, it's so competitive. I wish they fall. I mean, like, I would never think that way.
Oh, oh my gosh. No, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, you know, like climbing for me there's nothing wrong with competition, right?
Right. Yes.
But, you know, for me, I didn't grow up climbing in like a competitive environment. I was never on a climbing team. I was never, you know, I've never climbed hard enough to be competitive personally. You know, I'm a good climber. I'm proud of
But you're competitive with yourself.
I'm competitive with myself, right? But like, you know, I'm not for me, climbing has centered on education and community and outreach and advocacy. It's never centered on like you know, competing against others and achieving, you know, personal goals around like, you know, the grades or how hard I'm climbing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you know, partly because I just don't get to spend enough time climbing, but maybe one day.
Then what's your outlook? You were talking about that, oh yeah, you know, you took your rock guide course, but you're not quite sure how you're going to use it. And then, and how long have you established Rise Outside?
Oh gosh, 2020?
Oh, okay. During the COVID year, huh?
Yeah, during COVID. Yeah.
Yeah. So like any, like say, well, it's already 5 years, 10-year vision or like that type of thing.
Oh gosh. You know, it's I'll be really honest with you. It's hard for me personally right now to have a big vision or, you know, big goals because I'm so in the thick of motherhood and my life has become so like, it's literally moment by moment, hour by hour, day by day. So I don't think ever before have I been so in the present moment. I think motherhood does that to you. Like it just roots you down into the present. And so that's where I am. And I'm like loving it. I'm like finding my flow. I'm finding my stride. I'm figuring out how to mother my child and how to also bring in my other interests. And, you know, as I mentioned, like coming off of a bad injury, coming off of, you know, recovering from postpartum. So I feel so grateful right now that like where I'm at with Rise Outside and Kinship Climbing Collective is we've established these like, we've created these beautiful living, breathing organisms. And like right now they're thriving. And so, you know, Rise's guide team is growing. We have great leadership. We have a great executive director who's creating a long-term vision. And so I think for me, it's just right now, it's like seeing that continue to thrive and plugging into these organizations in the ways that I can be most helpful to them. So I think for me, that's like my guided days, you know, just I love working with kids, as I've mentioned. I love working with other women and other affinity programs. And so just like really focusing on that and, you know, focusing on our meetups with Kinship Climbing Collective. And, you know, I don't know. I think like when my child is at school, like, or, you know, like it's hard to think beyond this like little cocoon right now. But I don't want to say that anything's impossible, right? Like,
right.
That's the amazing thing about being around somebody like Lori, right? Like, or somebody like Anissa, who's a guide, or somebody like Patty, who's guiding in the gunks. Like, these are women, you know, I'm 39 and I'm like, yeah, maybe my 50s will be like the decade where I'm guiding the most and, you know, guiding hard.
You never know.
Who knows, you know, right? But exactly. So, but for right now, I'm feeling really, really proud of where I'm at and very fulfilled with, you know, the terrain I've been guiding in. So yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah, I really appreciate that you create this space for them.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
I wish that when I was starting climbing the gunks that I have you said Caroline or sorry, who
Carol.
took you in?
Yeah, Carol.
Carol. Yeah, who took
Yeah.
you in. I was like, wow, if I have somebody took me in there under their wings. Yeah, in that. Oh, that's beautiful. And climbing is just so wonderful.
It's the best. It's the best. It's the best and the worst at the same time. It's all the things all at once, right? It's all the emotions all.
Yeah, but it certainly kicked my ass, but it's in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. We keep coming back to it. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so you can reveal your new song to us.
Oh yeah. Well, so the new song is called "Wanna Start a Band."
Okay.
It's out, and we're going on tour in May and June. So check out our tour dates and come to a show. I just can't say too much about.
Okay. Yeah. No worries.
Like, that's all TBD. But I think their music is coming.
I see. Yeah, when I release this episode, I think it will be before your tour, so then people can still participate. Yeah.
Well, I hope our son Wilder, he just got out of the bath. I'm at my mom's house right now, and he's gonna need to get into this bedroom soon, and I'm gonna have to do bedtime with him. So we'll start to hear him making some noise in the background.
Yeah, I don't have to keep you for too long. And anything you want to add in this conversation?
Oh my gosh. No, this was wonderful. It's such an honor. It really is. Like I find myself sometimes going back to that like imposter syndrome version of myself where I'm like, what? Me on this podcast? Are you
Of course, but you have to remember that this community is very diverse and we need diversity in this thing.
Absolutely. No, I know. I need to like practice what I preach. So it's really been an honor, and I have so much respect for you, respect for the guests that you've had on. So it's just it's really fantastic.
I'm not trying to just find like all. I mean, actually, I should not say this. Originally, I want to say I'm not trying to find all this like lifelong guy that who like kick badass climbers, but you are badass climbers. So, but I'm just not trying to find just one single type, and I'm glad that you are different.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of women in guiding, right? Like so many incredible stories. So many of us coming to it at different parts of our lives and finding meaning in different ways. So it's an honor to be a part of this. It really is.
Cool. Thank you for being on this show.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. Thank you.